Attaining the ideal. The ideal cannot be made by mortals, but must be of the spiritual nature that has its foundation in truth, in God. Know the first principle. The gift of God to man is an individual soul, which may be one with him, and that may know itself to be one with him, and yet individual in itself, with the attributes of the whole, yet not the whole. Such must be the concept or the ideal, whether of the imaginative, the mental, the physical, or the spiritual body. All may attain to such an ideal, yet never become the ideal, but be one with the ideal. With this ideal once set, there will be no fear. There will come to each of us that grace to dare to be a Daniel, to dare to stand alone. We attain our ideal by seeing the Father in others. Let our prayer be, God, be merciful to me. Help thou my unbelief. Let me see in him that thou would have me see in my fellow man. Let me see in my brother that I see in him whom I worship. We reach this vision through Christ. It takes the penetrating light of his Spirit to discern the divine spark in fallen humanity. It takes the mind of Christ to bless and not condemn, to love and not censure. The fields are now ripe unto harvest, but the laborers are few. We must work, for the night of unbelief and outcomes. It is our heritage to catch the true concept of the divine in all, and to be, in truth, co-workers with God. As there is raised in ourselves more and more of the Christ consciousness, we become free indeed, and with freedom comes the awakening to the realization of the ideal. As we see others as the Christ sees them and strive to consecrate ourselves to him, then our daily acts, our words, and our thoughts will bring that understanding and realization of the ideal manifested in us, as well as in others. Let us look for good in everyone, speaking neither evil, harsh, nor unkind words to any at any time. Let us do all that we know to do, in love, and leave the results with God. Let us hold fast to that which we have purposed in our inner selves, knowing that no emergency in a material way or manner may arise that cannot find its solution in spiritual inspiration, for his promises are sure. Offenses may arise, yet with each and every fear there is that from within which will quiet our troubled minds, even as he quelled the tempest on the sea. As we seek, we find. As we knock, we are heard. If we are timid, fearful, or overcautious in giving out the hope which has sustained us, then we grow more weak and fearful ourselves. Let thy material things be the outcome, be the result of thy application of spiritual ideals. For spirit is the natural, the normal condition of an entity. For hath it not been given, God is spirit and seeketh such to worship him, in spirit and in truth? To this entity, then, as well as to many others it may be given. Be true to thy convictions, and to that thou believest, if ye will have harmony and peace in thy material, thy mental and thy spiritual life throughout this sojourn. Know that there are those realms wherein there is as much confusion as there is in the material world, unless the ideal that is ever creative in its purpose is the directing influence. Expression of myself has brought more misunderstanding than harmony, unintentionally, of course. This has been a part of the experience because of the high attainments sought by the entity. Do not lower thy standards. Please tell me as much as possible about this experience from the material, mental and spiritual standpoints, and of cause and effects. That which has passed is past. That continually dug up will continue to be a sore spot. That which is gone, let it be gone. Turn the face to the light in him. It is not by chance that an entity enters materialization or material manifestation at some particular period. For there is work to do for all. And that work is to be the living manifestation of the concept of each entity in the material plane of that which is its ideal. True, be tolerant, keep tolerant, though others may condemn you for it. As in the experience then ye had the ideal for true freedom. For freedom alone can come in the knowledge of the only true living God, and as was manifest in Jesus who became the Christ and the way. Thus keep that as the ideal throughout. In what way may I relieve present unfavorable conditions? In making for that dependence upon the creative forces from within to direct thee in thy activities with thy fellow man. This, to some, may sound as being impractical or visionary. Whose is the world, and the material things thereof? Who, declared the Lord, has the silver and the gold? Who gives the increase into man's hands? Man may prepare. Man may dispose. Man may make for activity. But only God may give the increase. Is there any advice for greater development of character? Study to know thyself in relationship to that ye choose as thy ideal. And let that ideal be set in him, who is the way, the truth and the light. This does not mean becoming goody-goody, no, far from it. Be able to look every man in the face and tell him to go to hell, but live as he did, the lowly Nazarene. Then, condemn none. 4. There are universal and spiritual laws that are a part of the self, as well as of the universal consciousness. 4. Like begets like in every phase of material, mental and spiritual experience. 4. As in the material world, ye find that ye do not gather figs from thistles. Neither in the mental world may one think hate and find love in one's bosom. Neither in the spiritual realm may one entertain the desire for ego to express irrespective of others and find the beauty of the spiritual thinking life. The demands of the entity are that each soul conform rather to the entity's standard. But has the entity set its standard that it keeps itself? Self-analysis, self-study and application in the experience of thy ideal. What is thy ideal? Then act in that way and manner towards others, as is to self the ideal way and manner in which others should act towards the self. The ideals of the entity are high. Apply self in the own ideal to influence rather than demanding in others an ideal. Having gained tolerance, having gained a concept of the expression of love in its truest sense in the material activities, these then should be the influences of the entity in the present, to correlate the teachings that make for constructive influence in the experiences of self that may be given in precept, in example, in activity among the peoples of the earth. That the law of the Lord, which is perfect, may be that which will be the guiding influence in the experience of individuals in their dealings with their fellow man. This should be the ideal, this should be the purpose, that the Lord may come in power, in might, through those who in sincerity, in earnest, seek to be a channel, seek to be an expression of his love in the earth. First in self find what are the promptings for thy activities in relationships to thy fellow man. Know thy ideal. Not of mental or material import but of the spiritual. For mind is the builder. The spirit is the motivative force and is the turning of self to the things of the spirit. Then may the promptings make for that in the experience in whatever direction the activities may be taken, to be of a constructive nature in the experience of the entity. And only these bring peace, harmony, joy of life, of service, of activity. In considering the life's work and the manner in which this has been spent in its manifestations thus far, much should be gained by the body from the various experiences the body has had. And if the body will consider seriously the purposes, aims and desires of the self, there will be seen one thing that thou lackest yet. Because the ideals have been set in material things, material accomplishments, these can and will only continue to bring discord and questionings even in self. For thou hast found and will find that when the goal is attained the ideal has faded, and little has been accomplished of a lasting or definite value. Not that the efforts have not and do not bring help and aid to many. But even when aid is given to the sick or the suffering, or the mentally disturbed, unless these be relieved or eased or set aright for some definite purpose or goal that has its basis or foundation in the creative forces or is of a spiritual import, what good has been accomplished? Thy efforts become then as good seeds sown upon the stony ground that spring up. Yet when the winds of adversity or the fowls of the air have descended on same they are soon lost and wither away. Other efforts become as the seed sown in that ground where briars and thorns and tares and weeds spring up and choke out the good. For thy work, as thou hast given it, is founded on temporal things. Then, know what thy ideal is, of the spiritual, not of the temporal, not that around which there may be put metes and bounds, but rather put thy ideal in those things that bespeak of the continuity of life, the regeneration of the spiritual body, the revivifying of the temporal body for spiritual purposes, that the seed may go forth, even as the teacher gave, sin no more, but present thy body as a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto him, for it is a reasonable service. Thus the question arises in the mind of many, under such seeking, under such direction, what is ideal or what is the ideal? In the term or sense indicated here, ideal means spiritual things, mental things, material things that are constructive in their nature, or that produce within the experience of the entity a greater awareness with the universal consciousness, called by whatever name one may choose, dependent upon the purposes in the experience of the entity. Here, ideal indicates in the spiritual that which is designed and indicated through the activities in the material sphere as the way in which one becomes aware of self being itself, and yet one with the creative forces, or the universal consciousness, to which each soul attains in its absence from the material body. For, it has been truly said that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Then, the ideal in the mental being depends upon who and what is one's Lord or King. And as to whether or not that Lord is capable of keeping that delivered unto it against any experience that may arise in any material, mental or spiritual approach to divine truth. Such influences from planetary sojourns are as urges. As to what the activities in the experience will be, or as to what the entity does about same, such urges, depends much upon the will, and that the entity has made or does make as its ideal whether mental, material or spiritual. And unless the ideal is founded in spiritual things, it must sooner or later turn upon self and make for stumbling stones rather than stepping stones to peace and joy and harmony being sought by every soul in its security here and, yea, hereafter. Then, as ye begin to show forth in thy relationships with thy fellow man, the love the Father hath shown to the sons of men, by not being willing that any soul should be separated from him, ye must by the very manifestations at some experience, come to be a separation or a fusion or union with the creative forces, with the abilities by will itself to know thyself to be thyself yet one with thy Maker. Study, then, to show thyself approved unto thy ideal that ye choose, and as ye have oft before chosen so thoroughly let that ideal be the living force, the living God, not an individual, not other than that ye may know thyself to be thyself, separate and yet one with that creative force, even the Father. And his promises are sure, and that which ye receive, that use. For to have an ideal, for to have a purpose, for to have knowledge and understanding without the courage and the will to use same is to become a weakling, not worthy, not able above that doubt, even as Peter when he walked on the water. And when you see the turmoils of the earth, and when you hear the cries of those that are fearful, and when you see the elements about the apparently indestructive forces, and ye doubt to be sure you sink into doubt and fear and despair, unless thy purpose is ever here am I, Lord, use me, direct me. But in the present the gain may be the greater if there will be set within self rather the spiritual ideal, and let others do as they may, but as for self it will hold fast to that which is good. Which means doing good to others, in little ways, in preferences, in gentlenesses, in kindnesses, even when these may be questioned by others. No, though, not only in what, but in whom ye have believed. For ye hold individualities and personalities as ideals. Do not worship personalities, rather that individuality as was manifested by Hannah, by Elkanah, by Abigail, by the mother of the Lord, by the holy women Elwa and Mary and Martha and Lydia, those whose beauty of aid and help brought to them not only material disturbances at times, but hope and harmony and peace and beauty. In the experience the entity rose to the greater authority, which almost undid the entity's purpose. Hence it in the present should be kept well in those activities or desires as indicated, that each edifice, whether the home, the hall, the office or the body, must represent an ideal. For it must first begin with an ideal deep within self, purposefulness, and not as something forced upon another. For, as is so oft, yes, always indicated, the creative force or God has entrusted man with a choice. Would ye hinder thy brother from the same? Keep in that thought, then, that the truth founded there is that based upon the oft-repeated statement that the Spirit maketh thee free, the Spirit of truth, not of doubt or of fear or of self, but the creative influence or force. Seek first, then, within self as to what is thy ideal. Hold fast, thou, to that strength as thou perceived that prompted the hearts and minds and bodies of those that served their fellow man without seeking for self-glorification. And with thy ideal set in the spiritual things, ye may find and ye will know the truth that was in him. For the truth shall indeed make you free, when ye come to the understanding of same as ye apply it in thy relations to thy fellow man. Then an entity's experience, or advent into material manifestation, is to make the path straight. For today, in the experience of every soul manifested, is the opportunity to make manifest that which is ideal in the experience of that individual entity. That there is spirit, mind and matter is self-evident in the expressions in which one finds oneself by the very awareness or consciousness of existence, and of the varying experiences or expressions that may be had in its daily relationships, its daily experiences with its fellow man. Other individuals are individual manifestations of their individual portion of that creative force. Then that there are ideal relationships in each must be self-evident, but as each entity, each soul, is creative and self-willed, then who may draw a line, but that consciousness that thy spirit beareth witness with thy Maker's spirit, as to whether ye fulfill that best demonstration or manifestation of thy expression in any given period or material manifestation. For God is not mocked, and whatsoever a man soweth that shall he also reap. Then, there are ideal relationships in the material associations, in the financial structure, which, sad to say, too oft is the judgment in material associations, and in the mental attitudes, yea, in the spiritual attributes. And then, as must be seen, must be felt, must be experienced sooner or later the awareness, the consciousness that only spirit is everlasting, then the promptings, the balance must be spiritual in its essence in dealing with or judging the mental attitudes, the social relationships, the material experiences. For unless they are such, how can they be everlasting or constructive in the experience of any individual entity? For as he hath given, rather doth the Lord seek that love and service be shown, than that one offer sacrifice or burnt offerings. For the love of the Father, that is manifested in the Son, should be the ideal of each. Then, let each so analyze those that have been the promptings that have brought about the basis of the associations through the experience. For remember, as he gave, there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Yea, a friend that would lay down his very life that another might know the way of truth and life. There is no condemnation in the Father, rather love that they each may find their way. Do not become discouraged in well-doing. Remember, no matter what others say, God looketh on the intent and purpose. Know that an honest try is counted to the individual entity as righteousness. For as he has given, to love and keep his commandments is the whole law. This is not always possible in the material things, but in the mind and the soul, if there is kept the purpose, the ideal, that is indeed the faith which saves the entity may manifest the fruits of the Spirit, patience, long-suffering, kindness, brotherly love, graciousness. Do sow these seeds. God giveth the increase. Cultivate them, yes, but don't plow them up by pulling them up to see what they would look like. Keep the faith. As indicated for the entity, there are those abilities within the self to choose by what spirit or power ye may make manifest thy activities. Whether unto the glory of the material things or the spiritual depends upon the choice made. Ye cannot serve two masters at once, for ye will hate one and love the other. So long as ye are in the earth, as he gave, there are tribulations to be experienced. But in the ideal in spirit, in mind, in activity we find that he overcame the world. Within the experience of self, then, as ye choose with those activities which come about thee, know who and what is thy ideal. One high-minded in its ideals, in its aspirations, in its desires, yet not always discreet as to that it is desired. And as discretion is the better part of valor, hence the greater necessity for the soul's having purposed that its ideal is set in that which is unchangeable and ever able to be an ever-ready help in the time of discouragement, in the time of stress or strain. For his arms are not short. Neither are his ways past finding out. And kept in an eye single to the service or companionship with him, his promises as they come day by day in the experience of all, there may be brought that peace and harmony in the inner self that may not be found in any other way. In the application of self, then, as to the developments in the present experiences, and in keeping that balance in body, in mind, in soul, in the activities of the self in this present sojourn, first seek to know self as to what is the impelling desire in thine inner self. Take counsel with soul, and let this be as thy first experience in thine psychic self. For psychic, as given, is but a name, yet its metes and bounds take hold upon the mental, the material and the spiritual things in the experience of every soul. But ask in self, what is my purpose? What is my desire? Is it an experience that I may exalt my inner self? Or that I may glorify my Maker, my Redeemer, my Lord, my Master? And get the answer from the mental self. Then enter into meditation, in the wee hours of the morning, when the world at large is quiet, when the music of the spheres and the morning stars sing for the glory of the coming day, and ask the soul. And let the spirit of self answer. Audibly? Yea, within thine own heart will come the answer yea or nay. Then, when thou hast made thine own skirts clear, thine own soul clean, until he answers within thee that thou, having chosen the better part, may be given the application or the privilege of using the talents thou hast developed in thine experiences. For, as indicated in that which has been meted or measured to thee, the purposes are well if the intents are kept just as clean. For they would bring in the experience of thine brother and thy neighbor the more abundant life and the more abundant understanding of the relationships of the creature to the Creator and the way of the Creator with the creature. The Father hath given such a leeway to the sons of men that no force, no impelling force unless sought or desired, and no activities in the material world, in the mental world, might be given. Then, if thine activities are such as to not belie that spoken in the mind or by the word of mouth, he will be thy guide as thou wilt be his son. Not that thine experience in the field of activity may be entirely different from that of thine next-door neighbor, but find not fault in thine friend nor in thine enemy. For, hath not he, the Father, allowed the tares and the wheat to grow up together? Be not as one that would tell the Father, the Creator, as to who the tares are, or as to when such a tare should be rooted up. Be thou rather found in the way of blooming, of bringing forth fruit worthy of a son that has been endowed with the privileges of manifesting the Spirit that he has shed abroad in the earth, through the gift to the world of the babe in Bethlehem, that grew in stature, in body, in mind, and then manifested the love of God in the way that he went about doing good to those that sought. Yea, those that asked in the Father's name. For, ever were the blessings to the individuals in accordance to the desire of the soul. Then, in applying self, my son, know that the Father liveth in thee, and will rightly guide thee in thy seeking, and in thine steps day by day, if thou hast prepared his temple in thee for the place that he may abide. If thou keepest a temple cluttered up with those things that bespeak rather of the flesh, only the flesh can answer, but if thou keepest a temple clean and decorated in the spirit of love, and in the light of truth, then it will shed its light abroad, even as he has given. I will not leave thee comfortless, but will come and abide with thee, that ye may be my children, and I will be your God. Then, in seeking those things that will make for the greater understanding in thine present experience, let thy yeas be yea in the Lord, thy nays be nay in the Lord, and thy days will be long in the earth, and many will call thee blessed in his name. For the way is set before thee, and it is not past finding out. Doubt not, but seek. Seek in his name. Know in whom ye believe, and the source of the might, the power as may control or direct those influences. And when the storms of life come, when doubts and fears and disappointments arise, know to whom ye may turn, in whom thou hast put thy faith, thy understanding. And know that he is able to keep that which has been committed unto him. While ye may not walk alone, he will walk with thee. As has just been given, know what thy ideal is spiritually, mentally, materially. And then go about to practice same. For to know to do good, and to do it not, it is sin to that soul. And to know the manner in which ye may help others and refrain, it is hellish in thine own self, creating conditions which must be antagonistic in thine own experience with others. It is the law of grace and the law of recompense, the law of love. As ye give out ye grow. Ye grow just as the earth did, by the Father God giving out of self and in that desire. What is thy desire? For God, for self, for thy fellow man? The first commandment is, the Father first, then thy fellow man. Little is spoken of self, but it is self-awareness, self-consciousness that brings fear and doubt. Hence in the application of self in the present, choose first thy ideals and purposes. Analyze self. Know what are thy desires toward life, what thou desirest to gain from same. And know that ye may not attain aught that ye do not give. For all that ye may ever possess is that you have given to others, whether it be in things pertaining to spiritual desires, mental aptitudes, or material things. For while these may not apply as in that carried to excess and say that all that you have you give away, but unless in thy application of thy ideals, it is with that purpose that every individual should attain, to that he may use for the successful demonstrating of his relationships to creative forces, ye may not have that thyself. For what thou art speaks so loud, seldom is there heard what you say. In the experience the entity understood the signs as of stars, as of measurements and directions, as those which pertain to mathematical calculations, and thus things which deal with that, not of materiality, not of material things, but high-minded, or those which require working out. This has tended to bring into the experience of the entity those accumulations of things. Let this not become too great a hobby. For the real value of a man consisteth in not what he hath, but that he hath given away. For all ye possess is that ye have given away in helping, in encouraging, in bringing hopes, in bringing life to others. That remember. To be sure, the earth is the Lord's. Act like it.